Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us as part of our virtual 2020 New Student Experience. We are glad that you have joined us for an exciting conversation with the Art Department. My name is Denise Monjarez, and I am the Director of New Student Orientation. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask us questions. You can also ask questions in our Q&A box at the bottom of your screen if you wanted to ask any questions privately. We'll get to as many questions as we can, but I'll definitely include our orientation email if you have any other issues. Now I would like to introduce to you Dawn Dillon from the Dean's Office for the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences.
Hi. My name is Dawn Dillon. Like Denise said, I'm the assistant to the Dean, College of Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences, and we'd like to welcome you today. We're so excited that you've chosen Edinboro to meet your career and academic goals. The Arts, Humanities, Social Sciences includes 8 departments, with art being the largest, and they have instructors that are high quality. They offer internship opportunities, student engagement, scholarship opportunities. So you're going to be really excited about your decision that you've made with the art department. I'd like to turn it over now to Suzanne Prue, the art department chairperson, and thank you so much, Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Dawn and Denise. And I'm excited to see so many people here this morning. I wish I could see your faces. I enjoy at these orientations, seeing you in person, but I really look forward to meeting you in just a little over a month here. So I'd like to just share a little bit about myself. I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm sharing, so I went to art departments at universities, both as an undergrad and grad student, and I studied printmaking at both places, but I became really involved with sculpture as a grad student and still work quite a bit in sculpture, printmaking, and drawing. So this is a commission by Febreze Air Purifiers, and they had me create these sculptures that represented 40 pounds of dust that the average household generates in a year. And they use this for a national PR campaign. So we are all very diverse, and we have over 34 faculty members. I'm a new chair who just took over from Jim Parlin, and this is just one of 2 pages of our last faculty Zoom meeting where we were toasting Jim Parlin, our former chair. So gives you a sneak peek at some of my colleagues. And I teach primarily in foundation as well as upper level drawing. So some of you might have me in the fall for 2D design. All of us have our terminal degrees, which in art is the Master of Fine Arts, as well as PhDs for those in art history and art education. And here you can see our faculty alma mater, which includes 4 Ivy League schools, as well as the top art schools in the country, including Rhode Island School of Design. And we're all very active practicing artists. So that's why I wanted to start with that slide of my own work. We're very active in the studio, but passionate as teachers and mentors. So we really bring what we do every day in the studio into the classroom to bring that professional experience to you, and that we live every day. I also wanted to share my excitement that we're celebrating 100 years of the art department. So this is our 100-year anniversary, and throughout the whole year, 2019 to 20, we've had a year-long schedule of screenings, art exhibits, artist lectures to celebrate this really exciting milestone. We are, as Dawn said, the largest department at the university, and we're also considered the flagship program among all 14 PASHE schools. And our reputation really extends beyond our region. We're one of the most comprehensive art programs in the state, all being within a university. So we're really almost like an art school within the university with 12 concentrations and 3 different undergraduate degree programs. So I didn't want to repeat too much of what you may have seen in previous presentations when you were thinking about coming to Edinboro, but I just wanted to share some exciting things that just very recent grads are up to, or that a couple like grads who are farther out have just accomplished really within, a lot of this is within the last year or even the last couple months. So Ashley Garner, who I taught advanced drawing and drawing 2 to her. She got her BFA in 14, but just graduated from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And she received the prestigious Emerging Artist Residency this summer at MassMoCA, the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art. And that's an internationally known museum. So she's gonna spend some months there this summer to prepare for an exhibition. Dan Becker, I just found this out because he's a Facebook friend of mine. I taught him drawing 2. He's now a storyboard artist for Netflix for a show called Cuphead. I don't know that show, but my son, who just graduated from Edinboro, said that it's also a video game. And Cuphead, I think, was renewed for its 2nd season. Some students, I've worked with most of these students, BFA graduates from just 2019, have just created an online platform to amplify the voices of LGBTQ artists. And they just created their first online national juried exhibition, Queers Just Want to Have Fun. I'm recycling a couple slides. So you may have seen Alex Ho, who just graduated. I taught 2D design to him. Just graduated in 19, and he works in post-production for National Geographic headquarters in DC. So, and this is just one other slide that you may have seen before, but Sal Frederick, I taught drawing 1 and 2 to him. He was on location in Florida in February shooting a film, but for the rest of the year, he travels with American Idol and is a production assistant. And we just learned Broderick McGarvey, who I taught advanced drawing to. He just graduated in the spring of 19, and he received a full scholarship to the MFA program at the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a top art school. Okay, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about your transition. And we don't have any questions yet. We've got 42 participants. That's amazing. I see there's one question. Or any questions yet before I talk a little bit about the freshman transition? Okay, so your freshman year is a big transition year. I think it's one of the biggest, most exciting and challenging transitions, but also a time of adjustment. Because I know a lot of you are used to having your parents around, helping you get up. They might be keeping tabs on your grades. I know when my son was in high school, I could just log in, and as soon as a teacher entered his grades, I could see what he got. So you no longer have that. You are now adults. Your parents aren't seeing your grades as you receive them. It's your responsibility to stay on top of multiple homework assignments, to show up for class. So time management is really going to be crucial. And sometimes students are even shocked that they have to work on the weekends. Like, you really have to utilize your Fridays and weekends to keep up with your academics and your studio assignments. So what I always suggest is that you not just use a planner in terms of what is due, but schedule everything out. Like, even schedule out your free time. When are you going to socialize, play video games, work out, and really try to, for major assignments, don't leave those till the last minute. Like, work on those over several different evenings or weekend days. So, really schedule out your time. I would really strongly suggest you limit your hours if you have an outside job. So that's one place where students run into trouble, is if they're work near job, but you're also have a lot of time that you need to put in for the rigor of studio classes. So I would limit your job hours to part-time hours. If you run into problems, please talk to your professors and talk to your advisor early before it snowballs. So often it's roommate problems, but I don't think you're going to be having as many roommate problems because you're going to be in singles. But if you're not getting along with suite mates, you broke up with your girlfriend, you're having trouble with time management. I know it's common for people to have trouble with anxiety or depression. Do please seek help early, talk to your professors, talk to your advisor. We also have counseling services that are really good at the Gehring Health Center. Seek tutoring if it's academic problems, and we have tutors for that. So do seek help. There are a lot of support systems, and do that early. If you have a learning disability, then you should file the appropriate paperwork with the Office of Student Accessibility and do that early so that you also have their help. So I mentioned advisors. I would suggest, so everyone will be assigned an advisor. Right now, you've been given a schedule that the university administration has put together for you. But after that, you'll be assigned an academic advisor who's an art professor. Most of you will have an advisor who's in your chosen concentration, but that's not always the case. But let's say you're an animator and you have a ceramics professor who's your advisor. They have training in what you need to be pursuing in terms of putting together your plan of study. You can also request to switch advisors. So if you don't have someone in your concentration but would like to, you can request another advisor. So I would suggest you make an appointment with your advisor first or second week of class just to introduce yourself. And part of your advisor's job is to help you with advice with your classes, help you with career advice, as well as put together a plan of study. When it comes time for scheduling, you will receive a time ticket for your time that's assigned for you to register. So you want to make note of that, put it in your calendar, and it could be 6 a.m. and you want to be prepared for that. You want to have an alarm set, and you'll want to see your advisor 1 or 2 weeks before to put together a schedule. And your advisor is there to make sure that you're following a plan that will help you graduate on time, and that you're signing up for enough credits and a good balance of academics and studios. And you actually can't register after this first semester. You can't register without a PIN. So your advisor will give you a PIN, which is a code that allows you to make adjustments to your schedule and to register for spring semester. So you want to have your plan in place as well as some backup classes so that you're ready to go when it's time to schedule. Because you don't want to wait, you don't want to put that off and have classes spill that you need in order to progress in your concentration. So while I'm talking about a plan of study, we've got a really great program that really helps you see how you're progressing in your major, and that's called Degreeworks. So you can log on to that through the portal, and it will show you what classes you've completed, which ones are in progress, how many credits you still need in order to complete your degree. And you can also click on tabs that show you which classes might fulfill certain gen eds, like say a C1, and you can see, are they offered this semester? Do they have seats available? So it's a really wonderful tool. And I would suggest that you print out a PDF of that before you make an appointment with your advisor, so that you just have it right there, ready to mark up. Your advisor can pull up the Degreeworks as well. And so I think probably this will be taking place over Zoom. So you can each share screens, but I think it would also be handy for you to have something to mark up. So Degreeworks is a really great tool. Typically, you should be taking about 15 credits a semester. 12 is full-time, but you should, I think ideal would be 15 credits. I would suggest you try not to take more than 3 studios per semester. You might have to squeeze in 4 studios certain terms, but there's so much work that's required for the studio classes that I think to really do well in them, I think 3 is a good number. And when I was an undergrad, I really hated it when people would say, oh, it must be great to be an art major and just have fun and paint and draw. And they didn't realize how rigorous it is. Like, I really feel like art is one of the most intensive concentrations degrees there is in terms of the time that's required to really do justice to your assignments. Make sure your first year that you get your 2 English classes taken care of and your math requirement. So you want to get those out of the way your first year. And for your foundation classes, maybe you're already aware that you'll be taking your first year drawing 1 and 2, 2D design, 3D design, 4D, which is time-based, color. You should have art history overview. So those are your key foundation classes that you want to get done your first year. For those of you who are in AMA, who are in photography, graphic design, graphic and interactive design rather, and cinema, your second semester, you will be starting in your first concentration class. So just have that on your radar that alongside your foundation, you'll be starting in your concentration. Your first semester, you will also be registered for Common Hour. And freshman Common Hour is not a credit-bearing class. However, it's very important that you show up every week. So it's for 1 hour every week. And it's a time where you can learn about the different concentrations. They will be alerting you to things like candidacy, which I'll talk about in just a minute. They'll be alerting you to scheduling deadlines, add drop deadlines. They'll have visitors from different concentrations to talk to you about those concentrations you might not have even known about. Like, a lot of freshmen don't know what is metalsmithing. They haven't heard of that and maybe haven't thought of studying something like that. So that's very important, even though it's not graded and it doesn't carry a credit. So some of you might be undecided. Actually, of the 42 of you, some of you might not even be sure you want to study art. You might have somewhat of an interest, but might have some other things you're thinking about studying. So do be aware that it's very common. You know, you guys are probably about 18 years old, maybe 19, might have some 17-year-olds. It's so common for you not to be 100% sure of what you want to study. And that's natural and it's completely okay. And it's okay to change your concentration or major your first year and still stay on track. And I think you're going to get a good feel for first semester whether or not art is the right choice for you. And if it's not, you can change your mind. I've seen students decide, I really love art, but I love it more as a hobby. And we've had students change to things like business or biology. But it's also very easy to change your concentration. So a concentration, a lot of people say, oh, I'm a ceramics major, I'm an animation major. We actually technically call that a concentration. That's also easy to switch. And I think once you're in your first concentration class, you're going to have a good idea whether or not that's a good fit. Sometimes people start in animation, they realize, well, I don't like doing lots of drawings that are really quick. I really love rendering things, and illustration is a better fit. So because we have electives that are required, art electives, we have academic electives that are required, and we all share the same foundation, it's easy to make that switch early on. Once you get more into your sophomore year, like second semester sophomore year, it could become a little more difficult to do that and still graduate within 4 years. Okay, so there are no questions. It's funny, we have 42 and there are no questions, My last group, our last group was 17 and we had lots of questions. So feel free to jump in. You could save your questions till the end or you can jump in with questions. So any of that is really fine. But I know a common question is candidacy, which is something you may have read about. So in the art department, we don't require that you submit a portfolio to enter into our art program. However, once you're in your second class in your concentration, so for painting, that might be painting 2, for example, or it could be animation 2. So during that second sort of intermediate level concentration class, you will be applying for candidacy. And so that's basically applying to get into that concentration. And the few orientations I've done, that kind of, when I can see people's faces, sometimes I can see that it throws them into a little bit of a panic because that sounds very scary. Like, here I'm investing money and my time, and what if I don't get into my concentration? It is fairly rare not to get into your concentration. So let me talk a little bit more about that. So save work from your freshman year. You'll be asked to put together a portfolio of artworks. And it varies, what they're looking for varies by concentration. So that we have sheets in our office, and it's also online, what requirements there are for candidacy. And so professors from your concentration will review your portfolio and decide whether your work seems suitable for your chosen concentration. The times I've seen students not get candidacy, most often the reason is that the student hasn't been working hard enough, and they should already have some red flags in terms of professors talking with them, that they're not showing up to class enough, they're not turning in assignments, or they're not putting enough time into assignments. So usually those students have plenty of warning that they're just not doing well in that with their coursework, and the grades will reflect that. Sometimes though, it's just not the right concentration for them. And so it's actually a good thing in a way that we're not letting people in who really belong somewhere else. And so it is pretty often that somebody will then apply for candidacy in a different area. Like maybe they originally are applying for animation, but then they instead apply to, we've had students switch to metalsmithing or drawing or illustration, painting. And it's really just that their talents really are more suited for a different way of working. And again, that shouldn't be a surprise. Usually your professors are talking with you and you've got some warning that something else might be more appropriate. I just realized though, when I talked about students not showing up, that's usually when I introduce my syllabus and at the new student orientation, that is something that I really want to emphasize, which is that you have to show up. And with the alternative arrangements this year, some of you will be on an A-B schedule. Different classes will have different attendance requirements, but all classes will have some sort of attendance policy. And it's very, very important that you show up when you're required to. I almost think if you have an A-B schedule that it might be more important than normal, because we really want to maximize in that face-to-face time where you're working from a model, where you're working with the wheel throwing facilities and ceramics, where you're having access to the specialized software in animation. So that is really key. And I think I saw that there might be a new question that popped up.
Yeah, Suzanne, we have a couple of questions in the
Sure.
Q&A chat. So thank you for those questions. The first one is, what type of computer do you recommend for a cinema concentration?
I was wondering, can the student tell me if they're going into computer animation or traditional, or do they know?
They just said cinema concentration, so.
Okay, does the student want to tell me if they're computer versus traditional?
They can
Because,
type that in the chat room if you're still listening.
you know what, I'll just address both because I'm sure we have a lot of traditional and computer animation students. So I will tell you that most of our labs are Mac based, and that doesn't mean that you have to have a Mac. You could have a PC instead. So it should be able to be powerful enough to do video editing and to run, you know, pretty powerful animation software. I know we do use the Adobe products quite a bit. However, if you're a computer animation student, we also run some software that that is in our labs that you can use in the labs. Some of it is pretty expensive. So software like Maya is a 3D software program that does require quite a bit of power. It's expensive, and students might just be using that more in the labs because it is an expensive software. The computer animation lab is PC based. It's our only lab that is PC based. I know some students might opt for a desktop, which I know, like for the price point, can be more powerful, but then you would need a tablet. You need something that you can work on that's more portable, or it would be convenient for you to have something portable to work on if you're gonna use a desktop. So I hope that answers your question.
The other question is, how will the art classes such as animation be held if we stay inside?
So right now we're doing an inventory of the different classrooms, and we're also looking into spillover spaces. We've done things like we have a very large classroom that has Cintiq tablets, and it used to be half a traditional room and half a Cintiq lab. We've now spread those out so that we can actually accommodate 20 students in there. So right now, things are very in flux. There might be some classes here and there where we can accommodate the whole group. It's going to be much more common, I think, that students will be, for a studio class, on an A-B schedule, where professors are meeting with half the group one week while they're communicating via Zoom to the other half. And then they're switching, like say on a Thursday. So on a Tuesday, Thursday, meeting with half on Tuesday, Zooming with the other half, and then switching it on Thursday. There might be some classes that would be more multimodal, so that rather than the two groups doing something different, the professor is broadcasting the class to the other half at home. So that's something that we're still working out. But in the art department, we're really trying to maximize face-to-face contact wherever it's safe, where it's possible to do so in a safe way. Because we're a little different than, say, a history class that can more easily work without that face-to-face contact. We know that you need to be in the labs with software you can't afford, or we're not requiring you to buy. You need to be using printmaking presses. You need access to live figure models. So, you know, art is a little bit of a different beast. We're really trying to do whatever we can to maximize that time. So I don't foresee a lot of the studio type classes being fully online unless there might be a professor with a health issue or another issue that makes that person unable to deliver lectures. Now there might, you know, we're still working it out with things like art history. It's possible some art history classes might be fully online. Others we're looking to move them into like the really huge Cole auditorium where people can really spread out. But regardless, we've got to be able to do so and maintain more than 6 feet between students, as well as have everybody mask. So that's our first priority, is that people are able to distance. And then from there, we're adjusting the teaching style based on safety.
The other questions, which I think is a good one. I'm going for animation, and I was wondering if you could go more into the difference between traditional animation and computer animation courses.
Sure. So my background is fine arts, so it's not my field, but I can certainly give you a basic answer to that, which is that the animation industry has changed in the like 12 years that I've been teaching at Edinboro. And so there is some crossover, but computer animation is, a lot of it is more working with, forms that are like polygon type forms that can be turned in space, that are three-dimensional. And it's still drawing based, but it's not as intensively drawing based as traditional, where with traditional, they're kind of moving back and forth between, when I say hand drawing now, I believe a lot of that might be on a tablet. Like we have 2 Cintiq labs where you can draw directly on the screen. A lot of students have their own iPads or Cintiqs or Wacom tablets. So you can draw on paper as well, but there is some crossover, because what I understand is more and more those drawings are then brought into the computer and they're manipulated on the computer, edited, and that's about the end of my knowledge. But I will say that both use the computer, because that's just the direction that the industry has gone. We have Mike Gens, he was a former Disney animator who worked on The Lion King, among other films. And he's like the last of a breed of really traditional animators, where he came up through the industry with everything being done by hand, with paper, hand painted cells, you know, the actual ink thing. But there is also room though within cinema to do things that are hand done, to make independent films, to do things like stop action claymations, which one of our professors, Brad Patello, that's part of his expertise, is stop action claymation videos. Those would be more independent films where students create their own fine art films, and it might be using painting on glass, for example, or it might use cutout puppets that they're filming. But that would be more independent films that might be more experimental. So that's kind of like a third subgenre. Okay. Bumping up while we go.
Suzanne, we do have questions about buying supplies and when they should purchase supplies. One of the other questions regarding supplies is, do we have to purchase the Adobe apps for class?
I don't believe you'll be required to purchase Adobe. We do have labs that will be open after hours that have actually all labs on the campus now have, have Creative Cloud. So you will be able to use those. If you wanted to subscribe to Creative Cloud, you could do that. I know there's a free trial, but I don't believe it's required. And I think that Hamilton lab I mentioned, where we're going to spread out, that will be monitored to make sure that people are distancing and masked. And so that will be available after hours. There's also a large lab in the library, and that has Creative Cloud on it.
They're wondering if they need to bring any art supplies with them.
Oh, right, the art supply, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so you can buy supplies when you come to campus. If you want to email your professor ahead of time because you have a source at home that you feel is more affordable, or you just want to make sure you have them ahead of time, you could. If you buy them from the bookstore, a couple things, that revenue goes back into things like student scholarships and it benefits the university. But maybe even more important to you is you can use your financial aid to buy art supplies, but only if you buy those supplies through the bookstore. And I think there's either a 10-day or a 2-week window where you have to get your supplies in order to use your financial aid. So your first day of class, your professor will go over the supplies with you, give you a materials list, and give you some time to buy those. Usually the professor will list alternatives, such as online places where you could order those supplies from. So yeah, if you don't have to get them beforehand, but like I said, if you'd like to, If your professor doesn't email you ahead of time with a supply list, you can always reach out to them if you want to get those ahead of time. In your first year, your supplies for a given class shouldn't cost more than, it should be well under $200, probably under $100, which you're going to learn that textbooks will be even more than that. I know the textbooks are quite expensive.
And then we had this question: how many projects should students expect during their first year or even the fall semester for their studio classes?
That's really hard to say because it varies so much by class. So I teach in the 2D areas. So I would say every time we're in class and drawing, we're doing a new drawing. Some other professors might have a drawing that would extend over a few days, but then I think it's typical for a drawing class to have a new drawing due either every week or every week and a half. I sometimes give 2 weeks for a drawing. Me personally, with 2D design, our assignments are usually a week and a half. So it varies a little bit. Some people might have more like 2 weeks for a 2D assignment. Others might have a new one due every week. But for 3D, I noticed, I don't teach 3D, but I noticed that those tend to be a little bit longer term with certain assignments. Like D.W. Martin gives a sculptural head assignment where students are laminating layers of cardboard and then they have to cut out a planer head. That is a longer term assignment. So that's a little harder to say, you know, because the technique takes longer than say a wire form. They have to do, it's a common assignment to give, to have students do a wire sculpture of say a shoe or a guitar or something like that. You know, that might be like a 1 week. So yeah, it varies, but I think your first year you tend to have more assignments than some other concentrations, like say metals. Once you're into it, like a metals concentration, you might be able to spend 3 weeks on something that's really labor intensive or sculpture.
There's several questions around like COVID-19 and how that's going to work. The typical question is like, will art studios and labs be open for student use? And like a very specific question is, if they're drawing a live model and are doing something like a facial study, how will that work with masks? So maybe.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of the portrait. We all agreed that the models will have masks. So I'll get to that in a minute. I hadn't even thought of the portraits, I have to admit. So we're working right now with the art department has an art safety committee, and we're working with Jim Dale, the head of safety, the head of campus safety, to figure out how to adjust our after hours facilities, because one building, Loveland, used to be open 24 hours and we can't do that in COVID. Hamilton, if you got in before 9 and you had a pass, you used to be able to stay till 3 in the morning if you wanted to. So we're required to have any outside studio hours monitored by a student. And the student is going to have to record who's coming in, who's leaving, where are they. And the monitors in the different facilities are also going to have to monitor and ensure that students are distancing, that they're not congregating, and that they're wearing masks. So the art department safety committee is getting together, and we're repurposing certain grad student hours and undergraduate student worker hours, so that instead of working in an office for say 10 hours a week, maybe they're using 5 of those to be a monitor, things like that. So we're working on that. So it will be more limited, but we will have outside facilities hours. And it's really important, especially if we have an A-B schedule. I think the students on a day when they're not in class, they really need those outside hours in order to use the facilities. But we've got to do it in a way that's safe. Are there other questions before I talk a little bit more about study abroad, internships?
I think for the most part, we're still grabbing questions, but I think we're good.
Okay, all right. I'd like to show you a few more slides then. Okay, there are many study abroad opportunities. Of course, right now, that is limited at the moment. So hopefully by the time our Japan trip in summer 2021 comes around, hopefully those restrictions will be lifted. But there are a lot of travel opportunities. Edinboro art students have studied before in Japan. We've studied in Belize, Spain, Belgium. The trip to Tokyo and Kyoto included things like touring Studio Ghibli. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Illustration students have had classes where they've worked on site with anthropology students in Belize. And actually circling back, that's one of the great things of being in an art program within a university is the interaction with other students in other academic areas and the ability to do things like work with anthropology students when you're an illustration student. And it is common for students to take things like art of the graphic novel, and then some students sign up for, rather than just the Japan trip, they take the course as well, where they learn the history of manga, which goes back centuries in Japan. You know, the idea of a comic book that's printed in a storytelling way. So, you know, that's part of the richness of being at a university, is being able to travel with other students from other academic areas to study art, but also study things that are related. There are also a lot of opportunities for internships. I know a lot of you are animators, others are graphic designers, others are, you know, you might be painters, you might be ceramic students. But some of our animators have done internships in California, New York. It's common for our graphic design students to do internships in Pittsburgh, where one of our professors lives, and she's very involved with AIGA, which is based in Pittsburgh. That's the national organization for design. So these are some student internships recently at the Erie Art Museum, Sapling Press in Pittsburgh, the National Ornamental Museum in Memphis. We talked a little bit about facilities. So here are some facilities shots. And we've got some screening rooms, a computer lab, a ceramics lab, metals foundry. And actually the art department has 4 buildings that are just about fully dedicated to art, as well as a 5th lab, computer lab in Wiley. So when I've taught at several universities and art programs, and I was just amazed when I first started teaching at Edinboro at how many clubs there are and how active the art students are. I think right now we have at least 19 art clubs, if you can believe that. And the art clubs, they travel, they bring visiting artists, they have like pizza critique nights, they have movie nights. So, you know, one thing I'd suggest you do is, I believe this is going to be the first Thursday of classes, the first week we come back. Every year we have a welcome event called Aloha, that's for freshmen. And we're going to have to really spread out on campus this time. We're pretty sure that it's going to be live and not some kind of Zoom thing. But that's where you can visit different tables and check out the different clubs and sign up to be on their email list. And a couple of the clubs are Silver Vision, which is a publication for photography, and Chimera, which is a publication for literature as well as art. And Chimera is both of those are publications that are designed and like from start to finish put together by student designers and artists with faculty supervision. And Chimera wins awards every single year. It wins national design awards, often in competition with professional designers. There are a lot of exhibition opportunities. We have 2 galleries. We've got Bates Gallery, which is the student gallery, and then we have the Bruce Gallery, which is our professional gallery, where you might see national artists showing. Also, on the bottom slides, every year in the Bruce Gallery, we have a Gemitter exhibition, and that's where seniors compete with each other to exhibit and to put together mini exhibits. So usually it's about 10 seniors, and they're in competition for the Gemitter scholarship. And so here you can see that this student winner received $2,500. And that's one of several scholarships that are available to art students. Some scholarships are specialized by concentration, like there are some strictly animation scholarships, and there's some crafts scholarships, just as examples. We have a really active schedule of visiting artists. So a lot of concentrations bring in animators from California, or painters from New York City or Pittsburgh or Philadelphia. But also every year we bring a really big name artist or critic in conjunction with the Erie Art Museum. So some of you may have heard of Will Wegman. He's a nationally renowned artist who got famous for photographing his Weirmeyer dogs, like in costume and stuff. So he was there, he was here a few years ago, and he did student critiques and lectures and a big talk. So really, there's no lack of things to do at Edinboro. We're a very vibrant community, and I just can't wait to see you in person at Edinboro. So I'd just like to see if you have any other questions. And also you can feel free to, you can find me on the art department webpage, Suzanne Prue, chairperson. You can feel free to email me if you think of questions later. You can also give me a call. Will the video be uploaded, it says?
It will be, this video session will be recorded. You will get a student email about where you can locate those recordings. It's either going to be on D2L or YouTube, or even both. So we'll definitely reach out in the next couple of weeks.
You're welcome.
I also just want to remind everyone, we do have a Facebook event tomorrow at 3 p.m. with some of our offices across the university that will, Student Health Center is going to give its talk, other great offices. So please log into Facebook at Edinboro University of Pennsylvania Facebook page for that at 3 p.m. tomorrow.
And thank you, Chloe. I saw the thank you. And stop by and say hello. Feel free to introduce yourself once we're back on campus.
I don't think we have any other questions.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. This is a great turnout. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Hope to see you all in the fall.
Okay, bye-bye.